and we start the session. So very good evening to my Indian friends, and a good morning to our US friends, and a good afternoon to our European friends. So we welcome you all with a warm namaste from us in India, and a big hi from Stephen. Um, when I actually to introduce Stephen for this webinar, it's a privilege to have Stephen with us on ProThoughts webinar. I was checking who can be a good speaker for us for our program management knowledge. And in fact, I got a consensus answer that you should talk with Stephen for this. He is a veteran, if I may allow to say that, with PMI. He has been with PMI for last 22 years, and that's my total experience in Pi Corporate so far. So I think that says it all. He is a transformation agent for a lot of things, including agile, and he is going today to talk about program management. Coming from him, I think it will be a great insight for all of us to learn about program management, because he has seen this discipline evolving right from the initial stages before the program management was evolved and to the current state. So without spending any further time, I want to hand it over to Stephen. Stephen, you can take it all is all yours. I will moderate the session at the end when you stop the session for question and answers. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. And I'm glad to be here with you all today to share some insights into program management. And as Ashish shared, I have been involved with PMI for over 20 years and have contributed to a lot of PMI's thought leadership around project management. So I was one of the transformation leads that supported the team that developed the newly released PMBOK Guide 7th edition. If you haven't had a chance to review that and download it, it is available both in digital format and in print. So please do get a copy of that. Also contributed to the Agile Practice Guide and the Managing Change in Organizations Practice Guide. In partnership with the International Council on Systems Engineering and MIT's Consortium for Engineering Program Excellence, I conducted a 5-year research study looking at what does good program management look like and how do we best marry the management side of the program with the engineering or the technical side of the program to produce stronger and better results. So I'm looking forward to sharing with you some of the insights that we gained associated with that. I will turn it back over to Ashish because we have a couple of slides about ProThoughts that I think he wants to talk to you about.
Okay, so Stephen, so I think this is a very common slide. All you know is all of you know that about ProThoughts, okay. That's what we do. So I would like to skip this slide, Stephen, and let's go ahead.
So we'll start with the agenda.
Yes, let's go with the agenda. Okay, you go ahead. I will be off screen. Thank you.
So we're going to cover different aspects of program management, starting with the context of the strategic imperative. So how are programs connected to overall strategy, and how does program management link to an overall system of organizational project management capabilities? We're then going to talk about what are some of the distinctions between programs versus projects. And we're going to talk about what are some of the common approaches and best practices for managing aspects of programs. Then lastly, we're going to talk about some of the unique characteristics of the systems dynamics in managing programs that are different from any other aspect of project management or portfolio management. And then we're going to have some time for questions and answers. So hopefully it will be a very informative session, but I'm most looking forward to the interaction with you at the end of the presentation. So let's talk about the strategic context. And according to PMI's research and kind of the foundation around which PMI's concept of organizational project management is structured, is that all strategic change happens through programs and projects. Now, that could be everything from releasing a new product like the iPhone, to developing a bridge, to instituting a marketing campaign, to develop a training program. All of those represent some type of strategic change, something that's new, something that's unique, something that's different. And in the end, they are intended to either help an organization produce value, or the output itself is the driver of the strategic value for the organization. So with that concept in mind, an organization exists in an environment. That environment is a country-based environment. It is a regional-based environment within the country. It is within an industry focus. So the organization exists in this environment, and it has a strategy that it's trying to accomplish to maintain its relevance. Now, whether you are looking at a corporate entity which has a profit motivation, so how do we continue to grow and generate revenue associated with our business, or whether you're looking at government and how government institutes policies that help the economy grow, that keep its citizens safe, that deliver government services to people more efficiently and more effectively, or an NGO that's looking at how do we help communities improve themselves and develop new capabilities. All of those organizations operate in this type of context where there is an environment and they have some strategy, policy, or objective mission that they're trying to accomplish. And every organization has to make some decisions about, with the resources that we have available, what are we going to invest in? Some organizations have very formalized systems that you have to go through in order to get a project or an initiative approved within the organization. Some organizations are very flat, and if you have a good idea and it goes through a governance body, they approve initial funding so you can get started. So this portfolio management perspective can happen in a variety of different ways. But in the end, the portfolio decisions, we are going to invest in XYZ initiative, leads to the initiation of programs and projects. And programs and projects both have the goal of delivering results that will help drive that organizational strategy forward. So again, if the strategy is to develop a new product, then the programs and the projects are measured on the extent to which they help, one, deliver that product, but also ensure that it is set up to drive the profitability of that product in the marketplace. So it's looking at how do we manage our marketing, what's our upgrade path, and things along those lines. Now, there are feedback loops in the system because as we're executing our projects and programs, we're learning more. The environment outside our organization is changing. That may present some risks to what we're trying to accomplish. It may also present some opportunities to accelerate delivery or to amplify the results. And so there's a feedback loop back to strategy and back to the portfolio saying, this is what we have learned. Let's make decisions on how we either accelerate moving this forward, amplify the value, or whether we even continue the initiative. Has the opportunity passed and we need to stop investing in something that no longer is going to achieve the results that we are expecting? Once the project and the program are actually accomplished, there is some level of turnover into operations. And operations focus is how do we maximize the realization of the business value? So if you have a new product, for example, you want your salespeople and your customer service agents to be communicating the value of that product to customers, to make sure that potential customers buy your product, to make sure that existing customers retain your product and potentially upgrade to the next level of that product. So your business operations is the engagement with the customer to ensure that the organization is able to continue to realize value from its investment in that product. And from operations, there is feedback back to the strategy about, is another update of this product really necessary in the market? What are competitors doing that we might need to respond to? So this organizational project management system is one of constant feedback, actions, decisions, value production, and it's a continuous cycle. And that's why we emphasize that organizational project management is about executing strategy And projects and programs are about the strategic change that helps to realize the value and benefit from those investments. And all of it requires a degree of change management, conversation, communication, building change within the organization in terms of new processes, new skills, new capabilities, but also working with customers so that they can use the product effectively, so that you're supporting them effectively, so that you're communicating to them about what's coming next. So it's a constant system that, when it operates effectively, can produce incredibly strong results. So we've talked about that strategic connection. Let's now talk about what is the difference between programs and projects. Now, we can't necessarily fight existing language, and in some instances, government, for example, in government, everything is a program, even if it has the characteristics of a project that we're going to talk about in a minute. And the language isn't so important as what is the intention of instituting a program versus instituting a project. And that we're going to talk about. So if you go to the PMBOK guide, you will see the definition of a project talks about these different elements here. It talks about the life cycle. A project has a defined beginning and a defined end. So you have the intention of starting at a particular point in time and an end point that is clearly defined. And during that period, the project is defined to produce a specific business objective, and that is the deliverable. The deliverable can be a product, a service, a process improvement, a training program. Whatever it is designed to be delivered from the time the project initiates until the project closes, with the close date clearly defined. Now, as you are planning that project, you are planning for how am I going to produce what the customer has defined in the requirements, and that's linked to the scope. How am I going to produce that in the time I have with the resources I have? And so you develop a project plan, and you have a cost and a schedule plan that is linked to that overall project plan. Now, in the course of executing your project, the focus of your efforts is to constrain change, because you have a very specific scope, you have a very specific timeline, a plan and a budget linked to all of those different elements. So anything that represents a change to either the scope or to the deliverable potentially negates all of the previous planning that you did and may actually impact the cost and the schedule at the end. And so the focus of a lot of the project related activities are to constrain change. Let's stick with the original scope and with the original requirements for the deliverable so that we can execute the plan and remain within the budget and the time targets. And usually at the end of the project, the output, whatever that deliverable is transitioned to some other part of the organization to utilize in an effective way. Now, if we look at programs, programs operate very differently. Programs are very open-ended. They have a very clear initiation point, but unlike projects, it is rare that a program has a fully scoped out business objective. There is a vision for what we want to accomplish, but the specific details of how we're going to implement that vision are to be discovered over the life cycle of the program. So give you an example. When Airbus decided to develop the A380 airplane, they understood that they wanted to deliver an airplane, and they understood that they wanted fuel efficiency, they wanted passenger comfort, they wanted other elements that made it easier for the crew to manage the plane in an effective way. But they didn't necessarily know all the elements of how they were going to build this plane to incorporate those elements. And so the program was very open with a focus on how are we going to accomplish these objectives, because they are going to lead to maximizing benefits. They're going to deliver value for the end user, the actual person flying in the plane, which means they're going to deliver financial value for the aircraft company because they're going to fill all of their seats because everyone will want to fly in this plane, which means that the aircraft company is going to then purchase more planes from us. So we are going to see financial benefit from this as well. So programs leave themselves more open so that they can identify opportunities to maximize the benefits through making a series of choices as the program unfolds. So unlike projects, programs are designed to embrace change. They are designed to utilize the learning, to utilize things that emerge over the course of the program's execution to figure out, how does this, one, help us maximize benefits, and two, how does this help us accelerate delivery of what we're trying to accomplish? And unlike projects, where there is usually one transition and the output is put or transitioned into the business or some other part of the organization. In programs, there is a nested system of activities. So there are many outputs being delivered and many changes being managed as part of the program. And so unlike a project where at the end there is a transition phase where things move into the organization, within the context of programs, there are multiple transition phases. And some programs will last for the entire life cycle of a particular product. So for Airbus A380, for example, that program ended when Airbus decided to discontinue manufacturing the A380. And actually, the program will not end for several years because they still need to support the planes that are already in the field. And so the program is going to have to set up internal capabilities to continue to manufacture parts, training guides, and other materials to help keep those planes in operation for their full life cycle. So those are some of the key differences between projects and programs. So I wanted to walk you through a couple of examples and ask the question, which of these are projects and which of these are programs? And because we have such a sizable group, we can't do this as an open exercise, so I'm just going to walk you through each one. So training generally is a project because there is a defined start. So we need to develop this content and deliver training to this audience. That training is going to occur or needs to end by X date. And so we have a defined start and a defined end for when that training program is going to occur. Now, the training itself may produce multiple deliverables. You may have the training itself. You may have resource guides for the students. You may have audio-visual tools that help you communicate information to the audience. So the project may have multiple deliverables, but it will start and it will finish in a defined time frame. If we look at the mobile phone, for example, you might think the initial development of the mobile phone was a project because we had a defined start and we had a defined end in terms of when we plan to get the product to market. But with the mobile phone, we also have to think about, one, we have the potential for security issues and breaches and defects in the software that actually makes the phone valuable. So we need to have a life cycle view of how we're going to maintain this particular phone in operation. And as you start to see the market embracing that product, you start to think about, what does the next generation of this phone look like? And you start another project to start building that next generation phone while you're maintaining the existing phones that are already in use. And so you continue this cycle, and as you develop the 8th version, you no longer support 1 through 5 in the marketplace because you're hoping that you've been able to move your customers along to upgrade so that, one, they get more value because they now have more benefits and features, but you also benefit financially because they're continuing to invest in new versions of your product, and you're adding other capabilities that keep them engaged with the product. So the mobile phone might look like it's a project, but it's actually a program if you think of it from a life cycle and how do we maximize the value from our investment in this product. Now, I often use the Heathrow airport in the UK as an example to kind of throw people off. Is it a project or is it a program? So is developing a new terminal a project? Well, it does have a defined start and it does have a defined end. if you only think about the focus on building the new terminal. But if you think about the fact that the terminal is designed to enable passengers to move much more effectively through the system, then it's a program. And with Heathrow, the interesting reason why I use that example is it was managed as a project. But what happened is when the turnover came, so when the project ended, the building was certified for occupancy, and the team turned it over to the airport authority to operate, none of the mechanisms to ensure that those operations were in place to operate effectively existed. And so for the first 3 weeks of its operations, Heathrow Airport was a complete disaster. And so there are now case studies exploring why did the project, the Heathrow Terminal 5 airport project, fail. And a lot of the insight is showing that it's because it wasn't managed as a program. They thought they were building a terminal, but they were actually putting into place a customer experience and a capability to move people from one place to another through this terminal. So that's one of those examples where it depends on your perspective, but that perspective can also have an impact on the ability to maximize benefits if you don't have the right elements in place to support the program. And if you think of a wedding is very definitely a project because there is a start. Once the couple decide they have set a date, all of the activities have to occur, and leading up to that date when it's finally executed. So these are examples. And again, the key thing to keep in mind here is not whether it's a project or a program. It's the focus on, are you simply delivering an output or a result? Or are you trying to enable a capability that's going to drive benefits? If you are responsible for enabling capabilities to drive benefits, you are managing a program, not a project. So how do we manage programs? Well, when PMI developed the first version of the standard for program management, it in essence replicated the standard for project management. There were process groups and there were knowledge areas associated with managing programs. And for the first 2 iterations of the standard for program management, that process mindset continued. And by the time we got to the 3rd iteration of the standard for program management, the community, the program management community said, your processes don't work for my type of program. And so PMI engaged with the academic research community, with program managers and PMO leaders to understand what are the real dynamics at work in the construct of programs. And if we need to make a shift from a process-based focus, what does that shift need to look like? And one of the key shifts was we need to change our mindset from managing process groups like initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, controlling, and closing. And we need to think about the fact that programs may have completely different life cycles. One program may have a life cycle of about a year, another may have a life cycle of about 40 years. If you think of the case of the Airbus A380, it has had a very long life cycle. And so how we think about managing that long life cycle needs to be flexible enough to accommodate all of the core activities that need to occur. And so that's why life cycle management is at the center of everything, because you need to think about how is this program going to evolve over the years until it finally realizes the benefits for the organization and it's either closed or transitioned into business as normal activities. And so that's why lifecycle management is at the core. Now, because the program may have an extended life cycle, it needs to have constant alignment with the strategy of the organization. So again, if you're talking about Airbus program leadership had to think about what is Airbus's strategy related to continuing this manufacturing this aircraft, and what are some of the things that we need to do to make sure that we're aligned with that strategy? Well, when they found they were delayed in producing the original orders, there was a lot of engagement with customers and stakeholders with the executive leadership to talk about what are some of the things we can troubleshoot so that we can get the planes manufactured and delivered to the customer in a reasonable amount of time. And so there was some adjustment and adaptation to the strategy because the decision about how we're going to deliver this product to the customer ultimately impacted the potential return on investment and value of that product back to the company. So there was constant negotiation and communication around what is our strategy here and how do we need to think about our strategic forecasts based on decisions that we're making about the product. And as you may know, Airbus recently decided that it was no longer going to manufacture the A380. And so the strategic alignment is now around how do we continue to support the planes that we already have in service, and what is that going to look like until all of those planes eventually are retired from service? And so that's the focus on strategic alignment. Again, there is an impact on benefits management. So the benefits aren't just the return on investment. In the case of Airbus, for example, it's around what is our reputation in the marketplace? How does the A380 affect our other aircraft? How can we continue to deliver value by ensuring that we're providing the capabilities that help keep the planes in service for longer periods of time so that there are fewer repairs, fewer time when the plane is not actually able to fly. So this focus on how do we make sure that we are doing things with our customer that keep them aligned with our product, but that also bring financial return and benefit back to our organization. So benefits management is a key, and benefits management is dependent on deliverables, but deliverables are not the focus, the benefits are. So we may have to initiate different projects throughout the life cycle to be able to deliver and continue to sustain those benefits over time. And as with projects, we have a significant focus on stakeholder management. We have our investors that we have to think about. We have our corporate leaders. We have our program team. We have our suppliers. We have our customers. So stakeholder engagement is a key part of this as well. And again, because our life cycle is going to be so long, and because there are going to be multiple changes and decisions that we make, because again, we're instituting a vision. We don't have a clearly defined deliverable that we're trying to produce. We're trying to institute a vision that is going to return different benefits for the organization. And so we need a senior body within the organization to help guide and direct us going forward. And so this concept of, instead of having process groups, let's have domains of work. And those domains of work are not independent areas of work. They interact, they interrelate, and they impact each other. So with the third edition of the standard for program management, we shifted from a process-based standard to a principle-based standard that reflected a dynamic system where you have to manage all of these different activities together in order to be able to achieve the results. Now, you might ask, where's risk management in all of this? Risk management is one of the knowledge areas in the PMBOK guide, and it was in the original standard for program management. So where is it? Risk management is part of the system. It permeates all of the different domains of work associated with being able to effectively manage a program. And it's not just managing negative risks that could negatively impact the benefits. It's also looking for opportunity risks for how do we accelerate delivery? How do we address an issue but do it in a way that actually delivers greater value or benefit for the customer? So these program management domains of work represent a systems view of how we think about managing programs. Now, in a program lifecycle, Again, we're linked to organizational strategy. And from that strategy and the portfolio decision, we have a definition of what our program is intended to accomplish. And from that definition, we start to formulate what is our program going to look like. So what types of projects or other activities are we going to need to support this? How long do we have to develop this particular product? What's it going to take to develop this product? Which suppliers do we need to provide the resources we need to compile whatever it is that we're going to deliver? Do we have the people and the capabilities on staff, or do we need to get them from somewhere else? So you start the concept of building the program plan and then starting the delivery process. Now, as you see, as we start to deliver the program, we're also beginning to authorize components, and those components could be subprograms. So it could be a core piece of delivering the overall value that we have as a program that can charter its own projects and its own business activities. We can also have projects. So we need particular deliverables as we're producing this output. And so we charter a project to deliver this output. If you look at the case of the A380, for example, one of the new elements that they wanted to develop was battery capability. And so they developed a sub-program to work with contractors to look at, and suppliers to look at, how do we develop a capability that's going to help power this plane to make it more fuel efficient, and again, to deliver greater benefits to customers who are using more electronic devices on the plane. So they have a sub-program focused on that. They have a project team that's looking to build each of the wings. They have a project team that's looking to build the fuselage. And at the program level, the program manager is managing all of these different activities to keep everything integrated, to ensure that there's oversight and governance associated with all of these disparate activities that in the end will ultimately come together to produce this new aircraft that we're trying to deliver. And then as the programs, as the sub-programs, the projects, and the business activities wrap up, then the program manager has to think about, how are we now going to employ these new deliverables and help apply them to build the capabilities that we're looking at. And as you can see, there's this big space called delivered value. And that indicates that as the sub-programs and the projects start to actually produce real deliverables, so we actually have a wing of the aircraft and we actually have a new battery capability, that is delivered value. That is something that we can begin to incorporate in this airplane that we're manufacturing. And so again, the program is focused on, how do we deliver benefits? And that benefits realization starts with the outputs from the sub-programs, the projects, and the other business activities. And again, the program could end once the airplane prototype is developed, but more than likely it's going to continue throughout the life cycle of that aircraft being in service, because we still have to upgrade the equipment, because it's going to fail over a period of 5 to 10 years. So we have to have replacement parts ready. We will have to reconfigure and redesign some of the seats, because people will wear them out over time. And so we need to have a replacement mechanism in place. And so it's not just about delivering, again, the aircraft, it's about how are we going to maintain that aircraft in service throughout its life cycle. Now, we've talked about benefits and we've talked about delivered value, but I want to provide an example that clarifies this road to benefits realization. Now, we talked about projects, and projects have a focus on producing a deliverable, which is a desired result produced specifically by a project or another program component. So a sub-program can also produce deliverables. Now, in and of itself, that deliverable doesn't have direct and immediate application. It exists and it provides some level of value because it allows us to continue what we have been able to do. But in and of itself, it may not be put into use and start to drive financial, reputational, or other benefits for our organization. When we actually take that deliverable and start to apply it, that is when we build a capability. And that capability So for example, when we take the battery that we developed and we plug it into the initial electrical system and everything starts to work, we now have a capability. We can see that the battery is actually powering up the plane. We don't know that the plane can fly yet. We don't know that things are going to work because we haven't gone that far in the process. But we now know we have the capability to power the plane in the proper way. Once we have manufactured the plane, we can start to evaluate the outcomes. So we can test to see, does the battery work effectively maintaining the electrical systems, or did we have to use backup systems, which means that that capability is not yet at the point we need it to be. Do the wings work in the way that we intended, and are the seats more comfortable? So we can start to evaluate, did we accomplish some measurable change that once we release this product is going to drive the performance that we're looking for, and that the outcomes are ultimately measurable. We can measure fuel efficiency. We can measure battery power. We can have people sit on the plane and tell us whether it's comfortable for them or not. So we can get feedback that tells us whether we're driving the right outcomes that ultimately are going to lead to the benefits. And once we start producing the plane and actually selling it and putting it into service, we have revenue associated with that. We have customer satisfaction because they're able to fill up the planes because people want to fly these new planes, and the experience is so positive that they start sharing information about how great it is to fly this plane. So we have both tangible and intangible benefits that we can associate with what started as a simple deliverable, and once it's fully integrated as part of the program, is now producing these benefits. Now, every time a deliverable is produced, in order to put that deliverable into operation so that we can build that capability, that involves change. So if I were to develop a training module and turn it over to you and say, here, deliver it, you wouldn't know what to do with that because you didn't develop the training course and you might not be fully familiar with the content. So if I don't explain to you what the content is, how to deliver it effectively, then we won't achieve the objective of your being able to successfully deliver that training. And so we need to think about, when this output is ready, how are we going to put it into use in such a way that it can drive the intended capability and change that is needed in order to produce the outcomes that we're ultimately trying to drive. So this is a framework from the Managing Change in Organizations, a Practice Guide, that has different components for how you manage change in a project environment, at the program level, at the portfolio level, and at the strategic level, because change is very different across those different domains. And for a program that has a multi-year life cycle, you're constantly going through this change loop. So again, another systems view of how we manage change, you're going to constantly go through this change loop, not only in developing the output and the deliverable from the program, but in managing your stakeholders, in working with your governance body, in ensuring alignment with the strategy of the organization, and to realize and sustain the benefits of the organization. So that's why, again, we emphasize that all strategic change happens through projects and programs, because change is key to being able to take the deliverable or that unique result and actually put it into practice to drive the capabilities and the outcomes that you're trying to achieve. Now, another thing to think about in a program, particularly a large program with a long life cycle, is how are you going to organize and structure your team so that you can deliver the right result? Now, many programs have very simple teams where everybody's working in the organization. They can meet face to face. They can engage with each other on a regular basis. Give you an example. Many agile teams that are developing applications that are all going to run on the same platform, each of those teams represents a team that's producing an element of a project. They have a defined start and a defined end. So we're going to have a 2-week sprint. And at the end of that sprint, we're going to produce something that we will be able to put into production on the platform to deliver a new capability. But somebody has to ensure that those teams aren't working in a way that the work that they're producing is ultimately going to conflict with the work of another team. And so there needs to be an integrator who's managing those different activities while they're producing their results. And even more importantly, if all of their results are going to be implemented on the same platform, then that integrator needs to ensure that their work will not disrupt that platform, because if that platform is the value that the organization requires. So if customers are using that platform and that platform goes down, the customers will either leave the platform or they'll complain, and it will have a negative impact on the benefits that the organization is trying to accomplish. And so you need an integrator who is making sure that all the aspects of that program are being managed effectively. And in this context, a program manager is just that, an integrator. So if you're working on a program that has engineers and software developers and finance people and external suppliers and contractors and a variety of different people, you want to develop a system that will allow those people to integrate their work effectively, to communicate and collaborate effectively, to promote a culture of collaboration and information sharing and decision making, to have executive sponsor engagement with you. So how you structure your team in a project environment is absolutely critical, because you need to structure it in a way that even though your engineer, your project manager, your program manager, and your software developer may talk about risk in a different way, everybody understands when we talk about program risk, we're talking about risk to benefits, and everybody has the same understanding, and everybody is looking at how their work either contributes to or detracts from realizing those benefits. And through our research with MIT and in COSI, we found that when you have these strongly integrated teams where people have the systems and processes to work together, where there's the right organizational environment, where there's trust and information sharing, where people understand what their role is, but they also appreciate what everybody else delivers, that when you have that strong integration, there's stronger and more effective decision making. There's stronger collaborative work, especially when problems crop up, when you need everybody on board to solve them so that you can move on. And there is really strong information sharing. And when you have that effective integration, there is often an impact on program schedule, budget, client satisfaction, and client requirements. So your team is also a core piece of being able to deliver on those benefits, because the stronger your team is, the stronger their performance, the stronger the likelihood that they're going to produce something that drives significant benefits for the organization. And now we're going to go back to that systems dynamic concept. When we were doing the research that led to that exploration of the integration framework, we polled program managers and systems engineers and ask them, what are some of the things that happen on projects that you have been on that result in negative results for that project? And these were the list of 10 things that people came up with. Everything from, we didn't have time to do effective planning, and so we're constantly reacting as we're trying to execute and produce what we were asked to deliver. That we did not optimize the value stream. So we had people on a project within the program focused on what was in the best interest of their project to deliver on time, but they didn't think about the consequences for the program or the benefits that we were trying to deliver. And so we have a result that is not optimal for what the program needed to drive the benefits. So these are common issues that surface in executing programs. And as you can see from the diagram to the right, those, like the program management domains of work, also interact with each other. So if we don't do effective planning from the beginning, then we run the risk that we're not going to have the right metrics, we're not going to have right alignment within the organization, we're going to have poor performance, we're going to end up firefighting. So one issue can have multiple impacts on the ability to actually manage the program effectively. And again, because we are trying to deliver not just a deliverable, not just the fuselage or the wings or this new battery capability. We're trying to deliver a more efficient aircraft that is going to help our customers produce a better travel experience for their end users so that they are able to fill that airplane, deliver people safely to their result, save on fuel, and ultimately come to us to buy more aircraft. And so our focus is on how do we address these issues so that they don't negatively impact our ability to deliver benefits. Now, if we look at those issues from the context of how do these challenges that we have in programs actually relate to the benefits that we're trying to accomplish. As you can see here, if we don't have insufficient planning, that could have a major impact on benefits realization because we don't have metrics in place to make sure that what we are delivering is actually going to produce an outcome that we can measure so that we can be sure that we're going to deliver the benefits. So if we promised greater efficiency from the battery technology that we're going to use, and we haven't planned for how we're going to measure the output from that battery effectively so that we can show that it results in less fuel usage, that it powers all of the equipment on the plane as well as the devices that passengers are going to bring. If we don't have things in place to measure that, then the likelihood that we're going to drive the benefits that we intend is going to be negatively impacted. The only area that might not affect benefits is if we have unclear roles, responsibilities, and accountability. Everything else has a direct connection to benefits. And again, remember that unlike projects, which produce deliverables, programs drive benefits. So if we're not looking at how we maximize our benefits and manage these potential challenges and how they will affect those benefits, then our program might not be a success. We can deliver all the different elements of the plane. We can actually put them together and we can have the plane out on the tarmac. But if we haven't managed the benefits effectively, if any of these issues impact how much it costs us to develop that plane, how much it costs us to keep it in operation, how much it costs us to service the customer, then our organization will not receive the benefits in terms of financial value and in terms of brand reputation. Now, from a risk management perspective, a number of these activities, a number of these challenges also relate to risk. And unlike projects where we're talking about risk to project performance, so schedule, scope, and cost, at the program level, we're talking about risk to benefits because again, you have a longer life cycle and a more open-ended endpoint for your program. And so you're not worried about, can we deliver this necessarily within a clearly defined and time box time frame. You're looking at, are we going to be able to deliver in a way that maximizes benefits? So again, if we do insufficient planning, we could significantly ramp up how much it costs us to produce each plane, and therefore we're impacting the bottom line. If we deliver a plane to the customer and have to bring it back because of defects or other issues, then we have to go back to reactive execution because we didn't deliver a quality product in the first place, and now we have to bring it back and make repairs, and that costs the customer money, which ultimately is likely going to cost us money. So we have to think of risks to not just the deliverables or the outputs from the program, but we have to think of risks to benefits because again, that is what we're trying to drive in the context of our program. So I hope that this was helpful in pointing out that the work that you do as a program manager is directly linked to the strategy of the organization, and that the benefits linkage is your linkage back to that strategy. The organization is charting the program to deliver some value back to the organization. To be able to manage the program effectively, you need to think about how you're going to manage the domains of work, understanding that every program is different and how those different domains of work interact with each other can be very different. You also need to understand that at the program level, you need to maintain the systems view so that you understand what's going on across the program as a whole, within the sub-programs, projects, and business activities that you have going on, and how once those sub-programs, projects, and business activities deliver whatever it is that they are expected to deliver, how you're going to integrate them back at the program level. And again, change management activities can help you ensure that you maintain that alignment across all of those different activities. But in order to deliver effectively, you need to make sure that you have a tightly integrated team that is collaborating, communicating, and coordinating their work effectively. As you're doing that, you also need to always keep your eye on how do we maximize benefits. And one way to do that is to understand some of the common challenges that can negatively impact programs and make sure that your activities are focused on ensuring that those issues don't surface in the first place, but when they do, managing them in such a way that you can ensure that you deliver the benefits. I hope that this presentation was helpful for you, and I will now turn it back over so that we can have some question and answer session.
Great presentation. I think it was so rich. Thank you so much, Stephen. Okay, I think it was so rich in terms of the insights about program management. I'm sure the audience had a lot of takeaways from this special webinar that we had on program management. And I would like to open this for question and answers. We have some questions right away, so I will take this opportunity to ask some of the questions. They're very nice questions.
Okay.
Yeah. Satish is asking one question is about nowadays we also emphasize project success to be measured in terms of outcomes than outputs, which is a PM Box 7 thing. This is also reflected in business case of project charter and KPIs. Therefore, isn't benefit realization management equally important for both projects and programs? Stephen.
Yes, benefits realization management is important for every aspect of the organizational project management system. The key difference between a project's focus on outcomes and benefits and a program's focus on outcomes and benefits is the project is usually ended before benefits can be realized. So in the context of the PMBOK Guide 7th edition, what we talk about in terms of outcomes management is whether you as the project team are accountable for putting the deliverable into operation or not, you need to think from this time you start initiating that project until you have closed it, how are we enabling the business to use the deliverable that we're producing? Now, again, you may not be accountable for that. There may be somebody in the business unit who has the ultimate accountability for taking that deliverable and putting it into practice. But you as the project leader have a responsibility to make sure that that business leader, one, understands that they need to plan for that transition. Number two, that they need to engage with you to understand risks and lessons learned that you have that are going to impact how they put that deliverable into operation. And number three, where you can coordinate with them, you need to coordinate the transition planning and the handover so that, again, if you need to provide support or training or whatever your customers need, that you have those mechanisms built into your project plan. Now, one of the key challenges with a lot of projects is that they don't plan for the change management. And then when they are in the execution phase towards the end of the project, the business unit says, well, how are you going to help us use this? And there has been no funding or no planning for how are we actually going to build these support systems and this change management to help you put the deliverable into practice. So don't get caught in that trap. You build in change management and transition planning into your project plan and negotiate with your executive leadership if you need to negotiate on the cost or the resources associated with that. So that's how projects connect to helping to support the outputs. Now, on the program management side, the program is responsible for driving those benefits with the business owner or the executive sponsor within the organization. So the program will likely continue once the deliverable is put into operation. And so it's incumbent on the program manager to make sure that that deliverable is actually producing the benefits that the organization is trying to accomplish. So in one instance, you're helping to set up to achieve the outcomes, and in the other, you are directly responsible for it.
Okay, all right. So just a related question, Stephen, on this. Now the terminology which we are using, outcomes, earlier for project it was outputs. Okay. Now,
yes,
why we are using the terminology as outcomes for project, which is associated with programs? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so outputs are simply the desired result or deliverable. So it's the training program, the new process, the phone. It is the deliverable itself. The outcome is actually a measured result in capability. So let me give you an example. If I'm preparing this training program for you, I put together the slide deck. So the slide deck is an output, but that output doesn't have any value until I actually show up to do this training session.
Absolutely.
And can talk with you and answer your questions and engage with you around the content. Now, at the end of the session, you are going to complete an evaluation. You're going to evaluate, was the content helpful? Was there anything that you could apply? Did you get your questions answered? That is a measure of how well I use that deliverable, the slide deck, to do this presentation and share information and engage with you around the content to actually produce a result that you communicate, I either learned something or I didn't. So that's the difference between an output and an outcome.
Okay, lovely. Okay, thank you so much, Stephen. Now, you can start asking your questions, okay, in the question and answer panel or in the chat as well. Meanwhile, Stephen, I have another question, a couple of questions, okay. Surya is asking, in a program, can we have one project as Agile Scrum and another project as a waterfall methodology project?
Most definitely, most definitely. As a matter of fact, in aircraft manufacturing, for example, you see a lot of hybrid program systems where we know how to manufacture aircraft wings and fuselages and all of that. So we use traditional project management to manage those components. But when we're developing new software capabilities, so for any fighter jet or commercial aircraft, they're now enabled by software. And so we can have agile teams developing the software that's going to help run and manage that aircraft system. And so, yes, you can have project teams or program subprograms that run in an agile way while you have other projects and subprograms that operate in a more traditional way.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you for that, Stephen. And another question was, is there any methodology for a program like a project?
I would say that really depends on the organization and the types of projects that they have. So if you work in aircraft manufacturing, there is a methodological framework that you would follow for managing the development of a new commercial aircraft, for example. If you work in the car industry, there is a blueprint methodology that you would follow for either development of a new car or release of a new model of an existing car. So industries might, or organizations might have methodologies for the particular products that they develop, but in that there's still a lot of flexibility, because if you've manufactured, when I grew up, you could literally take a car apart and put it back together and it would work. But now, because software is such a critical part of managing different aspects of how that car functions, very few people could take a car apart and put it together today. So you need specialized skills and capabilities for that. And so If you think of adding now batteries in hybrid cars, then that's a completely different model. And so you need flexibility in your methodology to allow you to be able to embrace new technologies, innovation, and change. So there's some standard things that we need to do. Again, we need to manage benefits. We need to manage risk to the benefits. We need to organize our team. We need to have effective planning, financial management. All of those can be standardized because we know how to do that. We've been there, done that. But on the other side, we need to make sure that we give the teams some flexibilities so that they can integrate, innovate, and be creative.
Great. Okay. Thank you so much. Okay. So we have a last 1 minute for the question and answer. In that meanwhile, I will ask the question to Stephen, and I will share the PDU claim code with all of you so that you can claim your PDU, and I will also launch the poll. So the question is related to disciplined agile by Nabil. He's saying, what is the scope of disciplined agile? It's a new concept from PMI. And what is the scope of disciplined agile in program management? Because disciplined agile is applied enterprise-wide. So what's your take on that?
Okay, if we go back to that original concept of the organizational project management system, where you have strategy, you have value decisions that you make at the portfolio level, you have projects and programs that implement solutions. If you think about that in a software development context, so let's take the iPhone, for example, which is largely a software product because it runs on a software-based operating system and it runs on apps. So at the portfolio level, you're making a decision about what's the next version and the features and functions that we need to start developing for the next version, and you start investing in that. At the program level, you're looking at what are customers asking us for that we need to run on our current models that are in the marketplace, and you have to think about how do we develop them so that they run on the four different versions of the phone that we have in the marketplace right now. And so when you're developing the product backlog for the teams to pull from, you're looking at, do our user stories effectively look at all the products that we have available right now to ensure that whatever we produce links with all of those different products that are in the market. And if not, then we have to make a decision about which products we're not going to support and remove them from the market. So that's an example of how disciplined agile looks at it. You make portfolio decisions just like you would in traditional project management. At the program level, you're looking to integrate to maximize value for the products that you already have in the market. And at the project or team level, you're looking at how do we identify and prioritize our product backlog so that we're helping to maximize the value associated with the products we have in the marketplace.
Brilliant. Okay. Thank you so much. I'm Stephen, and I'm ending the poll. Okay. I just used the time a little smartly. Thank you so much. And
thank you.
Okay. I had a couple of more questions, but I think the paucity of time. It was, I think, like everyone echoed my sentiments. It was an insightful presentation. I think people will know a little more about basics of program management, and I love the slides that you used about insufficient planning, where is project, how to manage program is different, managing change in program is different, managing change in project. Awesome presentation. I would love to have a rerun when we actually put it on our channel. So thank you once again from ProThoughts and all the people here on representing them. And thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it, Stephen. And we have shared the claim code. I'm again sharing it so you can use it. We'll send a mail to you as well, whoever has attended, and you can claim the PDUs for that. Thank you so much for all of you, and a warm namaste from ProThoughts and me from this side of India. Thank you, Stephen. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you.